Hello, everyone. This is a special edition of the Bill Mason Show. Something it's just on my mind about this congressional bill, HR5717. This thing is flat out shocking and basically a subversion of the Second Amendment that will most likely be stuffed under an emergency type bill. This one in its entirety, there's no way I could see the president actually signing this into law. But knowing how the machine of politics works, something like this is going to be slipped in with this next emergency coronavirus type of act or whatever they choose to call it. This one is a mind-blowing, basically repeal of the Second Amendment. It's going to price average people out of gun ownership. It's going to do it through a 30% additional tax on firearms, 50% tax on ammunition. I mean, we're looking at a federal license, okay, a federal license to purchase firearms and ammunition. The opposite of that, the no need for licenses in the Second Amendment. I mean, this is an in-your-face slap to most Americans, and I think at this point, the mandatory 7-day waiting period, and you're going to get a lot of people out there who say, well, why can't you wait 7 days for a firearm purchase? What's the big deal about that? And what's the big deal about maybe a license to purchase the ammunition and the firearms? The problem with that is that now you're establishing some entity, right? So you're establishing an entity to not only control the tax, the additional tax that they're imposing, and to keep track of the 7 days and to keep track of the one firearm purchase per 30 days. So now you have an entity that you've created to take control of these things. And it's a backdoor way to not only do a full gun registration, which is unconstitutional, but this is also the price point that it becomes to become a firearm owner. Okay, most firearm owners, first time buyers, they, unbeknownst to themselves, they go out and they buy a pistol, and a pistol's around, maybe depending on your budget, $500 to $1,000. Okay, depending on your taste and your budget. You're talking 30% tax on that firearm. You're talking say you're walking out with $600, okay, with your first firearm and your background checks, which are already in place. I know you always hear from the left that mandatory background checks don't exist. Well, they do, and you pay for them. You pay for a NICS check, and anyway, when it's all said and done, you walk out the door with a $500 firearm. You're really over 600 at this point. Well, now you add the 30% tax on this firearm and the 50% tax on the ammunition that you're going to want to, of course, put into your brand new purchase firearm so you can train and practice with it. Now you're literally doubling the price. So now you're walking out at $1,400 for basically a $500 gun purchase. The other smack in the face with this federal firearm license that you're going to have to renew. Okay, so now this isn't guaranteed, this thing. So the right to bear arms is guaranteed for American citizens. Now this license, that subverts the Second Amendment right there, because now you need an approval. So the federal firearms license has to be renewed. So what's also running concurrently with all of these things, okay, we have social media now is becoming a huge part of whether your job can promote you based on your posts on Facebook and maybe your Instagram posts and things like that. It's already invading your personal life, and you cannot have a work and a personal life. Like, you cannot support the Second Amendment at a liberal company and be promoted. They may have hired you when these things weren't in place, but now you'll never become upper management. Well, why is that? Well, Bill, we saw a post the other day where you were at the firing range really tooting your horn about the new gun you bought. And at our company, Boogle, we find that unacceptable. Therefore, you don't have what it takes to be upper management here. I mean, this type of nonsense is already in place. uh, the federal firearms licensing. Imagine another bureau that is put in place. You already have the ATF. So the ATF is going to have expanded powers, and there's most likely going to be an IRS division that's devoted to handling these new taxes. The best part is those taxes are going to go. It's subverting the Pittman Robertson Fund, which normally was an excise tax on ammunition that went towards funding giant national parks and keeping the wilderness wild. And that is now being changed, and it's going to go to public programs, eligible programs, which is the actual wording. And the funny thing is that it's not going to be the Eddie Eagle gun program. It's not going to be a program that promotes gun safety. These are most likely going to be some form of liberal, like Acorn, like startup of some sort, maybe some kind of 501 nonprofit that just gets this money funneled into it. And this has nothing to do with stopping gun violence. This is making gun ownership harder and putting more hurdles and hoops for the average first-time gun buyer. Now, I have a few firearms, and the ammunition tax is what really hits me hard, because if you enjoy shooting, this is going to price you out of your training. I mean, the whole point of owning a firearm is to be trained in using that firearm. Now, of course, no one I know that has a firearm is for assault. Okay, my AR-15 is for defense purposes, so mine's a defense rifle. I would rename mine the DR-15 if I could, but AR doesn't stand for assault, and we all know that. Also, the outlawing of basically every black rifle on the market, magazine capacity in excess of 5. I mean, this stuff is so draconian that you can't walk this back once it's in place. Do not fall asleep while these Democrats pull this crap. And they will slip this into an emergency bill because they do not waste a crisis. And we've talked about it on the Bill Mason show about this crisis. And if you've been paying attention, we've walked you all the way through, and we've watched the Democrats behave poorly, really, really bad, offer little or no alternatives or little or no benefit to the American people, and use all of these crisis situations to basically launder more money and get it into the hands of their pet programs. And if you're paying attention, you witnessed that. This is something that they have wanted for a long time. And this crisis could be the point which they slip it in. Do not let this happen. I need you to call all of your senators, call your congressmen too. And just, a phone call is one thing. If you can email them, bombard them. I don't know how else to do this, but hopefully HR5717 doesn't make it. But the other thing that they do is they just reorganize it, maybe cut 2 or 3 things out of it and slip it in this emergency bill. So, there's many aspects to this. And, the one thing I just skipped, the bullet point, the federal firearms license, 21 and over, okay? 21 and over. So at 18, you can pay taxes. At 18, you can serve your country. You can die for your country. At 18, there's a lot of things that make you an adult. Except for firearm ownership, you have to wait to be 21. The shifting to adulthood is another thing to be watchful of, because they have brought up lowering the voting age to in the 16-year-old range, and they want to raise things like firearm ownership up to 21. Very scary. We really have to watch these people, because there are things that they're willing to put in place that, like I said, once you give them this power, you're not going to walk this back. And then, anyway, the guy who introduced this, which I always thought was some sort of puppet in Congress, I don't know how he got elected in a state like Georgia. His district, I really want to look into his district, but Hank Johnson is a glorified moron, an absolute idiot. I don't know how he gets reelected. I would love to show you some of the things that this moron goes out on the floor and talks about, but the fact that he wrote this bill, honestly, someone else wrote this bill and used Hank Johnson, because it's worded very intelligently, and there's a lot of, like I said, slippery slopes here. But I'm going to show you some videos of Hank Johnson, and then you can think about whether this has any kind of merit and should go any further.
Coming. The patent trolls are coming. And I show 1 minute and 41 seconds, sir.
And the gentleman's time has expired.
I'm getting shorted on my time. 30 seconds.
If the gentleman needs additional time, I'd gladly yield 30 seconds.
1 minute.
1 minute.
Could I get another minute?
I yield another minute.
2 minutes.
1 minute.
1 minute. Okay.
Gentlemen.
15 more seconds.
I yield the gentleman 15 seconds.
I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman, I think I've mixed up my speeches. We've got to ensure access to helium for all. What do you do when the wolf is crying out, or actually barking out, there being no helium for comedians to get that high-pitched voice? Do you move back from the door and then kneel down and pray and hope that everything is okay? Ferguson could happen in any place in America, whether or not it be in Ruby Ridge, Utah, or wherever Ruby Ridge was. I guess we'll probably have folks putting on white hoods and white uniforms again. Brings to mind occasions where, as a youth, my sister and I would go to my uncle's house. I would use as my text the song some of us may remember by Janet Jackson, "What Have You Done For Me Lately?" My uncle's wife would prepare a lot of food, and we would sit down and eat, and the food would taste terrible. "What have you done for me lately?" We had a couple more days to be there, and we hoped for the best. And so the next day, we sat down at dinner, and we had leftovers. What happens when you put in a cage fight a giant in with a midget? The use of the midget, the use of the M word is no longer socially acceptable. Well, the midget will not win the fight, I'm going to tell you that. Now, the M word refers to a group of people, the little people. If you put 30 midgets in with that giant, then the midgets have a chance. It really refers to a medical condition. Now, they have weight classes in cage fighting. Dwarfism is the name of that medical condition. You'll just have equal weights. You'll have equally weighted combatants. When you put a quarter in the pocket of a rich man, then there's a hole in that pocket and it trickles down. The quarter falls out into nickels and dimes. Location, it's 7 miles between one shore and the other. Is that correct?
I don't have the exact dimensions, but to your point, sir, I think Guam is a small island.
When you're downstairs in the bathroom and something's leaking from the upstairs bathroom, and then someone tells you that it's raining, it just doesn't make sense. My fear is that the whole island will become so overly populated that it will tip over and capsize.
We don't anticipate that.
The copyright disclaimer used under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Such allowances are made for fair use purposes such as critique, criticism, comments, news reporting, research, scholarship, and education. Fair use is permitted by copyright statutes that might otherwise be infringing. All media obtained is for fair use purposes only, and if the Bill Mason Show by any chance made fun of your video, you should be proud. If you aren't, get over yourself. You can email us at thebillmasonshow@protonmail.com.